Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our entitled people. In today's episode, I'm an uninvited guest, but you should apologize to me. Should I have been a Kevin? Entitled parents in coffee shop. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I'm an uninvited guest, but you should apologize to me. So I am now back at work 1 day a week as of this week, but since October I have been on maternity leave. For the first few weeks, we wanted total privacy as this pregnancy was pretty hard on me. Most people respected it, but my husband's sister did not. Now when I'm at home, especially being 2 weeks post-birth, I like to breastfeed topless with a frozen nipple cover over the breast, not being used or tandem feeding. Very rarely when it is near feeding time will I wear a top or bra. My husband is very happy with this arrangement and my daughters don't mind it as long as I cover up if they have friends over. Understandable since I don't want to be topless in front of a bunch of 10 and 7-year-olds. So 2 weeks after I gave birth, I had my newborn son on one side of me and my toddler son on the other tandem feeding. I was topless, feeding, and sitting with my feet up, watching a horror movie on the couch. Then I heard the front door unlock. Now my husband gets home around 12 some days, so I assumed it was him, completely forgetting that my SIL has a spare key in case of emergencies. I focus on my feeding, then I hear her scream from the living room door. I turn my head to look at her, and she's covering her husband's eyes with one hand and taking off her shawl with another to drape around me. She comments on the state of the house. Remember, I had a 2-week-old baby and a toddler in the house on my own, and how I am molesting my kids and hurt her husband's feelings by exposing him to nudity. I told her if she didn't like it, then leave. She threw some more insults and left. To this day, she still wants me to apologize for breastfeeding topless in my own home that she walked into unannounced. You've changed your locks, right?
No.
That shows you are afraid to stand your ground. You ask for the key back, and you draw lines. Change the locks, take back your spare key, and ban her from the house unless she agrees to keep her mouth shut and your husband is home. That's not okay of her at all. Hopefully when she has kids, she's beyond stressed with no help. Maybe that will slap her overly entitled ass back to reality and get her to think twice before she judges someone. She can take a long walk off a short pier, into the piranha tank. Seriously, then only house I walk into unannounced is my own. The sheer gall of someone walking into a house with a newborn and complaining about the state of the house? Moron. A-hole. If you don't like it, literally never come back. I don't know her, and I'm angry at her. Right? BF, and I even knock on our parents' doors unless we were expressly told not to that day. Like, we'll be in the backyard with the barbecue, so just come on through the house. If she keeps bringing it up, return the favor. Oh, you mean that time you just let yourself into my home? Like you own the place, despite knowing I had 2 babies? Tell me, SIL, where exactly should a mother feed her babies, if not in her own home? Maybe if you learned some basic manners, you wouldn't have such issues. Wow, no apologies required on your side. You see what you see if you're fool enough to walk into somebody's house uninvited. If she's prone to that, she's going to see more than breastfeeding one day. Those babies got made somehow. Ask for your key back, then change the locks. She's nuts enough to have made copies. Should I have been a Kevin? So, last week was my birthday and a couple of friends took me to one of their favorite restaurants. It was a little hard to choose what to eat since I didn't want meat or chicken. I'm currently fighting gingivitis, so these more hard-to-chew things are out of my league, and most of the other dishes had shrimp, which I'm allergic to. We decided to have a fish, whose side dish was rice. The rice could be simple or with nuts, which I'm also allergic to. We asked for 2 orders of the fish, one with common rice and the other with rice with nuts. We end up only eating one of the order, So we ask if the other can be put to go in two different bowls, one with the common rice and one with the rice with nuts. The waiter gets the order and goes in the kitchen. He comes back a few minutes later with two packages, and I ask which one has the common rice. He says, I mixed the rice in both of them so that you could have some variation. I was shocked and simply said, well, I'm allergic to nuts, so I'll actually have no variation and no fish at all. He wasn't even shook by that and said, you still can separate the fish, it wasn't that much nut in it. We didn't argue. I simply paid and we left. We had a great time despite of that, but my friends and my sisters, whom I told the story once I was home, told me I should have requested for a different package or some measures with the management of the restaurant. We have specific instructions for him to separate the rices, and now I paid almost $100 for a dish I couldn't eat anymore because of him. I don't like confrontation in these places, and when it happens I kind of shut down and can't help either side, so I always let it go. I'm always scared that if I go into confrontation I will end up being a Kevin. So, should I have gone Kevin on that waiter for making me lose my dish? Or was it not something worth discussing? You should have asked him to take it back and provide a separate dish that you could eat. A discussion with the manager would have been appropriate. Adding to this that requesting kindly for what you ordered does not make you a Karen/Kevin. It is when you get attitude and treat the workers as less than you that you become a Karen/Kevin. They should absolutely have had a conversation with the manager, but given the waiter's response of there being not too many nuts, there's no way I'd have trusted him to provide me with something else. There's too much chance that he'd just try to repackage what was already contaminated. In the future, OP should have them bring containers to the table and either package them in front of him or do it himself. You missed the chance to educate the waiter, so maybe in the future he will be more cognizant of food allergies. That's not being a Kevin in my book. Expecting to receive what you asked for and having to speak to the waiter or even manager if you don't get it isn't being a Karen. You weren't entitled, you just wanted what you had asked for, so it would have been perfectly reasonable to ask the manager to resolve it for you. I've been sent home with leftovers that aren't my own. I always food packaged at my table or have them bring me containers. Once it's on the table, it does not go back to the kitchen. Entitled parents in coffee shop. Was sitting in a cafe I frequent reading a book this morning, and not one, not two, but three separate families came in with young children. Keep in mind this is a cafe on a busy street with not much space between tables. The one mother was immediately loud and entitled. The cafe is usually full of people quietly chatting, working, or reading, and tried to compensate by fake smiling and pretending to care about those around her. Oh, do you mind if I take this chair? I hope you don't mind children sitting next to you, etc. She then proceeded to chat with the guy she was with, deadbeat dad, while her children wandered around the cafe looking for attention. The poor older child had obviously been tasked with looking after the baby and was not having it. Good for her. The baby at one point almost wandered out the door onto the busy street, and the mother slowly got up from her chair to lead him back to the table and then promptly ignored him again, and he wandered off to my table where he was clearly looking for attention, which I was tempted to give him. Cute little guy. The other two families left their children to literally run around the cafe, and of course at one point one of the children tripped and fell and then was screaming, while another child decided to dismantle the display of coffee grinders. And what are the parents doing during all this? Smiling, not a single speck of embarrassment or a thought for the other patrons in the cafe. At one point, one of the kids tried to pull a laptop being used by another patron off a table. Now, I love children and I work with them on a daily basis, so this is not about the kids, but I am exhausted by how many parents have no boundaries, self-awareness, or respect for those around them. The children suffer as well with a lack of boundaries and education on the difference between a quiet place and a playground, not to mention the obvious lack of engagement from their parents. It is possible to get a child of any age to sit and play quietly with proper engagement and boundaries. When I got up myself to kindly tell one of the young children that the product display was not a toy to play with, the mother seemed annoyed and not at all concerned that the child could have hurt himself because what he was trying to pull down was made of glass and the floor is concrete. She then starts passive-aggressively talking to the guy she's with, who, if he was the dad, was the worst, about how, "Oh, I guess people aren't used to children, but it's so cold out. I guess we need a ballroom in here," or something, blah, blah, blah. What an ass. She is saying this while blocking the aisle between the tables, so I had to walk all the way around the cafe to put my dirty cup in the dish bin. Compare this with a mother I spoke with 2 weeks ago whose son had gotten away from her and pulled my croissant off my table while I got up to get my coffee. She profusely apologized and bought me another croissant, and I hadn't even seen what happened. I had no problem with that. Accidents happen, and she took responsibility. The smiling passive aggression is the worst. No wonder so many children have behavioral problems if their parents smile while displaying aggression. It's just gaslighting. I have luckily never seen this. However, I enjoy delivery more than restaurants these days. If I had done this as a kid, never mind. I wouldn't even have thought of acting up when we were out. Likewise, my daughter never did this either. These parents nowadays are unbelievable. Restaurants are not babysitters. Grow up and deal with your children. Right. Why even have kids? As a childhood educator, I really do wonder about some people. If you want to keep up with the Jones, buy a car, don't create a human. It's not just nowadays. My sisters and I were servers throughout college, 40 to 50 years ago, and people let their kids run wild in restaurants then. We lived in a resort town, and I guess their vacation mode was total neglect. Running around at knee level when people are carrying trays filled with hot food is not advisable. I would be passive-aggressive back and loudly proclaim that some people shouldn't have kids if they're not going to parent them and leave it up to others. I would be so embarrassed if my children behaved that way. My favorite, a sign in a rural Scottish pub: unattended children who run amok will be given 2 espressos and a puppy. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next video.